That's right. Welcome to another episode of Words That Kill. And today we are going to be talking about killing the loved ones on the page. We're going to be talking about that. And of course, I am not AF Stewart. It's pretty obvious to see that. But she is here with me, obviously, as well. And so we thought it would be fun for the last time getting together here for Words That Kill to talk, to have her be the interviewee because she is such a prolific horror author herself. And I'll let her tell you about her and everything about her. And so please take it away.
Okay, so I'm apparently getting an. Oh, there we go. Okay, I'm Anita Stewart, right under AF Stewart. I write horror, I write fantasy. Currently working on my first paranormal cozy mystery with only one dead body, which has been a problem, but I have persevered.
Nice.
And if you can't tell, I have killed off a lot of fictional characters in my books. A lot. And yet there is a reason why my motto is all things dark and stabby.
So that being said, killing off a loved one on the page has many desired storytelling effects. What is one you would say you like to use it most for?
Probably to explore dysfunctional romantic relationships, because that's usually who I'm killing. It's like spouses murdering spouses, or boyfriends killing boyfriends, or or girlfriends killing boyfriends, and whatever. I mean, well, I've actually had a sort of a lesbian relationship. One killed the other one. Then I've had a couple of lesbian serial killers too. So
Nice.
in the Regency era, I might add, it's I kind of look at it as Jack the Ripper meets Jane Austen. That's a particular story. I like that particular story. But Millicent and Jane are very nice people, if you don't mind being murdered.
What are some key components previous to the killing that are the most important to sell on the page so that you get the desired effect of the killing?
Well, it kind of depends on what the story is, first of all, because I mean, if you're coming, like, if you want to create a good villain, you have to make him rounded, or her
Hmm.
rounded. But a couple of the stories where I've killed off loved ones, I've done it from the villain's point of view. So you actually have to kind of make the villain sympathetic, right?
Nice. Yeah.
And familiar, at least relatable, not necessarily sympathetic, but relatable to the reader. So that's a an angle sometimes that you have to play with as well. But yeah, it's like, but I mean, when someone's killing off a spouse or a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever, I think you have to make the motive relatable. So you kind of have to ground it a little bit in um, relationship problems. I mean, regular, normal relationship problems that don't usually end up in murder, and then take it to the extreme. It's like with one story I did, it was about a husband who discovers his wife's little dark secret. But the wife's little dark secret was totally reliant on the fact the husband was as annoying as everything. Like, she couldn't stand him. Anyway, and then there was the story couple where both of them were murderous. And it stemmed in the fact that, they had gotten married. The marriage was kind of an unequal partnership,
Mm,
whereas he was a very intellectual and she was not.
mm.
So eventually that inequality sort of graded and became a relationship problem. But again, those two took it to the extreme, and you'd have to read the story to find out what happens. But yeah.
Is there terms in which the loved one is innocuous in the story, but is important to move the story forward where you kill them?
Um, Usually if I'm doing a loved one, like a relationship story, I don't usually do like innocuous. I
Hmm.
mean, I like the killer and the victim to get their say.
Mm.
I mean, I don't like doing I hate to call it Final Girl because I did a Final Girl podcast and it kind of changed my mind a little bit about Final.
That was a good one.
But it's that sort of damsel in distress sort of syndrome
Uh-huh.
I don't like, and I don't usually give it. I always like to give the victim a little bit of agency at least.
Mhm. Nice. Has there ever been a moment in your writing where you have um, might have created a false finish or foreshadowing that it was became effective tool to maximize the actual finish?
Oh, all the time. I love the twist. Especially if I'm writing flash fiction. Short stories, not necessarily. I mean, sometimes most of the short stories I do are straight out, but with the flash fiction, I'm always twisting it. I'm always setting it up for one thing and turning it into something else at the end. It's like the one I did recently, the most recent one I did for Pen of the Damned blog. I set it up as the kind of the corpse bride scenario.
Hmm.
But about halfway through the flash fiction, you find out that she's not exactly a nice corpse bride.
Do you find that often the killing of a loved one is a much more brutal killing than a typical killing might be for the even for a villain who may be a serial killer or a killer themselves?
Again, that depends on the story.
Hmm.
Because if you're doing a villain story and they're killing an innocent person, then yes, it's got to be brutal. It's like the scene I did in Gothic Cavalcade, where the abusive husband has locked the wife in the closet and murders her sister.
Nice.
It's a very brutal scene. You don't see anything because it's from her point of view, and the
Mm,
only thing she is doing in the closet is hearing it.
mm.
So she's hearing him beat her younger sister to death.
Oh, brutal.
So yeah, it's very brutal scene. It sets him up for the ending where he gets his, very much
Mm.
so. It's a little paranormal get his, but yeah. But
Nice.
that particular scene, I did it deliberately with only sound
Ooh.
because I thought it would, if you added sight and the rest of it, I thought it would be a little too gruesome.
Mm.
And I wanted her not being able to help, being helpless, being stuck in the closet, being locked in somewhere where she couldn't help, where she couldn't save her sister as part of the scene as well.
And it's
So,
written from her point of view?
yeah. I mean, I don't think it's third person. I mean, first person, but it is
Mhm.
from her point of view. It's been a while since I wrote that book, so
That was early on in the killing in the
yeah.
kill count then for Anita Stewart.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, even earlier than that was the Killers and Demons books, and yeah,
Uh-huh.
they're pretty brutal.
There's a couple murders in your haikus too,
Oh, yeah.
you know, which were
Yes,
very early in your career as well.
yeah, the poetry is not spared from the dead people. Yeah, I've actually wrote a couple of serial killer poems, so
Hmm. Yeah.
somebody dared me once to do that, and I think I'm up to like 3 or 4 now, serial killer poems.
That's awesome. What is a common cause and effect for the ancillary characters when it comes to the loved one's death?
Well, a lot of my loved ones are in short stories, so it is kind of self-contained in a
Hmm.
lot of cases. It's just the two people. But I mean, with like in this book here, Fairy Tales and Nightmares, the Snow White retelling has a love triangle of sorts in it. And the end is pretty much everybody dies. So there is a big fallout from that particular killing the loved ones.
What what has been the cause and effect for the hero, and where do we see it most in your stories? Is it mostly the emotional elements or the physical elements that come across when you're talking about the hero after effects of the killed loved one?
Well, yeah, my heroes are damaged. They're like there's like seriously damaged. I mean, if you take this book, Past Legends, I mean, she's the hero. She's a pretty good hero, but I mean, she's pretty much a survivor of an abusive relationship, right? And she turns the abuser into a tree in the prequel. So Merlin is a tree in my until book 3, where he's no longer a tree, and then she beats the crap out of him with a gnome, which is a nod to Jim Nettles, by the way, in case you're wondering. That book hasn't been published yet, but yeah, because
That's awesome.
I'm still working on that particular series.
Did
But
he dare you to kill somebody with a gnome?
no, I just got the idea in my head on my own. It's like I was like they're fighting in her garden, right?
Yeah.
And they're doing a non-magical beat the crap out of each other battle in the thing. And I gave her a little advantage because she knows Krav Maga. Apparently, she was doing secret things in Israel at one point during her magic career.
Nice.
We
Nice
don't talk about
backstory.
it. Apparently, we don't talk about what she did in
Of
Israel,
course
but
not. Yeah.
yeah, there was stuff.
Hmm.
Anyway, so I mean, well, like she's like thousands of years old. She's done a lot of stuff. But so she's got it. I gave her that little advantage so she could go toe to toe with a guy, right?
Hmm.
Anyway, and Merlin's always dependent on his magic, so he's not all that great with hand-to-hand combat. So I kind of evened out the battle, right? But still, he beats pretty much. He gets some good whacks in too. So she's on the ground at one point in the garden, and gnome is right there in the garden handy. So she picks it up and whacks him across the head with it, ending
Hmm.
the battle. And they're all immortal, so it wouldn't matter. She killed him at this point. In fact, she'd probably relish killing him a couple of times.
Yeah, come back so I can do it again.
Yeah. So I mean, there's always psychological damage with my
Hmm.
heroes.
Hmm. So would that fester in emotions, or do you feel like there's
Oh yeah.
certain things that physically they would ail from too?
Well, she's developed a drinking problem, definitely. Yeah. A lot of my characters have drinking problems,
Yeah,
which
I
is
know you've
very
said that
odd because
before.
yeah, I don't drink, so I
Yeah.
don't know where this drinking problem issue came from. But I mean, and but I mean, in book 3, she actually goes to therapy. So you
Hmm.
know,
Where do you most often find that killing the loved one is effective? What act or what part of the book do you feel like is where it becomes the most effective for you?
well, it depends. Like a lot of this all depends on the story. Because I mean,
Sure.
sometimes you don't kill off the loved ones in the story. Sometimes they're murdered right away. It's like yes, and sometimes they're a sacrifice to the gods, right?
Yeah.
It's like that. That's my favorite story in Visions and Nightmares is when gods roar. Because I mean, it's kind of a commentary on an unhappy marriage,
Hmm.
like an arranged marriage where it's unhappy, and basically, she wants to go back to her former life. When she has the chance to go back to her former life, she says, "Sure, I'll serve up my family as sacrifice to the
You're right.
the Eldritch God. No problem. Take them." So that's the ending. A lot of times it is kind of the ending, like in the
Hmm.
short stories, like, this is the ending, this is the murder. But sometimes the murder happens in the beginning, like with like one of the stories in Killers and Demons. It's not exactly a loved one, but it's a kind of a like she's a sex worker, so it's a sexual
Hmm.
relationship, right?
Hmm.
But she kills him and takes his money. It's like it establishes right off the bat she is a murderous person, right?
Yeah.
But she's also a very sympathetic person too. So
is it harder to have more real estate ahead of you than behind you when you're writing these deaths, or do you feel like it doesn't really matter because you either have to build it up or you have to talk about the regret and what happens after?
Yeah, well, the deaths are always planned with me,
Right.
especially in the book, in the novels,
Sure.
and they always have a point. It's like I don't kill characters off for no reason, right?
Hmm.
There's always a point. There's always a purpose to it. Like it's either the ending, like the dysfunctional relationship is going to end in bloodshed because that's the story. The character's going to get killed off because he needs to get killed off for plot reasons. Um, so there's always a point to the story. Like the point to, like the sister murder that I was talking about in the closet. The point to that was the impetus for her to leave her marriage and run, right?
Hmm.
Which is how she found the masquerade carnival, which put the whole plot into motion in the first place. So that then she finds what she thinks is a good place there, only it turns out maybe it isn't, and then she finds out it really was, and there's a whole thing. But yeah, I mean, there was black goo involved, so I don't blame her for wondering.
You mentioned earlier about damsel in distress, so I'm wondering what are some good steps to take so that we aren't utilizing bad tropes like fridging and rape scenes and damsels in distress for this particular killing, because I would assume that it's very easy to fall into those traps with this type of killing.
Yeah, especially like when I was doing fairy tale retellings, I really had to pay attention to that, especially in the story Violet Brides, which is based on the Bluebeard fairy tale. And if
Hmm.
you know the Bluebeard fairy tale, it's basically he's a serial killer killing his wives,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So what I did with that particular fairy tale was I took the wife who eventually exposes him, and instead of making her the unwitting victim of yet another marriage, I made her deliberately seek him out to find out what happened to his former wife, who was her sister, and to seek revenge.
Hmm.
So I took the damsel in distress and I sort of flipped it a little bit on its head
Yeah,
and made
yeah.
it a revenge tale. Anyway, and she kind of falls a little bit for his charm in the way, but in the end, he gets his. There's ghosts involved in that one too. So
Nice. You have a thing with paranormal, but killing your villains is paranormal.
yeah, well, no, he actually did not get killed. The ghost was helping her. It
Okay,
was the
okay.
ghost of her sister who was helping her.
I was gonna say, do your villains not die naturally? Kidding.
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, I've stabbed a lot of people. I've shot a few of them. I actually killed one murder victim with a clown trophy and a rubber chicken.
All right, that might
There's
be a
been
spoiler for later.
yeah, well, yeah, that is I've done weirder things than that, but
Okay, all right, fair enough. Look, I am curious too. You're a person that follows their muse. Has your muse tried to talk you out of killing a loved one before, and what rationale would they have given you to do that?
I've n- I've only ever had one hesitation about killing a character. It wasn't a loved one, but it's only
Hmm.
been one time that I've ever hesitated on killing anyone.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was a character, it's a work in progress, it hasn't been published yet, but it was a psychic character. He was such a nice guy and such a nice character. I did have a little hesitation about killing him in the next book, but he's still gonna die, so it's like, I felt bad about that one, though.
Sort of.
Sort of, yeah.
I
But,
mean,
yeah.
odds are if you're a character in Anita's books, you're gonna die. So you just got to get used to that
Yeah,
fact.
if it serves the plot, yes, you will die. I mean, there was one character in the upcoming uh, Obsidian Blade series that I'm working
Mhm.
on, that I wasn't going to kill, and then he died. It's like, I didn't mean to do that. The plot's better for it, so he's dead.
All right. So here we go. The moment I think most of us who watch this show have been waiting for. Okay, now to the 3 questions that everybody on this show gets asked. They're just for fun. Do you struggle with killing your characters, or do you quite enjoy
Oh, I quite enjoy it.
it?
I actually, if I'm having trouble with scenes like the transition scenes or the description scenes or the deep emotional scenes, I'll just go and kill a character off and write a death scene. It's like, oh yeah, I can do those with my eyes closed. I mean, they're fun. I don't know why. I found the really weird thing is I found that horror writers like to kill off their characters. They rarely
Mhm.
struggle with it. A few of them do, but most of them I've interviewed rarely struggle with it. Fantasy writers, on the other hand, struggle with it a lot.
Yes, they do. It's weird.
Yeah, it's like
Uh,
I am definitely a horror writer when it comes to killing off characters because I do not struggle with it at all. They're
yeah, and
just
fantasy writers have more of a body count than you could ever imagine because they have wars and different
mm,
things too. So it's interesting because it's yeah.
yes,
I think they gravitate toward that because they put so much into their worlds and their character building and things like that. And whereas horror people, we make characters just to kill them. So you know,
well, we deal more with monsters too. Like,
yeah.
I mean, once you've written an eldritch god and they've eaten the village, all the rest of it is just like, yeah,
it's all suspect after that,
it's like,
right?
yeah, once you just massacred a village for no reason whatsoever, other than I mean, yeah, it's like,
Yeah. So, what is your favorite death that you've ever written?
my favorite death, I gotta say, it's in Ruined City. It's the story that takes place from the point of view of the Night Wraith, and they basically eat people alive. So yeah, I go into very nice description about how they hunt and how they kill, and
Ah, lovely.
yeah, I enjoy writing that story. It's
I
like, yeah,
bet. Yeah, because it's not a one trick pony. That story. That's a real like deep dive into what is really going
yeah,
on.
and it also connects back to another story, and you find out the reasons for the other story in that
Hmm.
particular story. So it's kind of a very interesting, complex, interconnected story. Anyway, and the reason I wrote it is because I figured the villains needed a point of view. It's 'cause, like, it's like
Hmm.
you had the point of view of everybody from the city, but I wanted the point of view of the creatures that came from the curse because they were affected too.
What is something you've researched that's been related to you killing a loved one?
Um, I I think I'm not so much a love one. I mean, like poisons, but the most interesting thing I had to research for character death itself, not necessarily, although I suppose they could because they're kind of frenemies in the
Yeah,
story,
sure.
um, was whether or not a vampire could actually rip off another vampire's head.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, I decided they couldn't because they could easily snap the spine, right?
Uh,
And dislodge that, but I was fairly sure with all the muscles and the tendons, they would have a really difficult time in just ripping the head off.
sure, yeah.
So, and I mean, they might be able to do it, but it would probably take some time. And that particular scene needed to be done within a relatively quick time span. So I gave him a knife and he partially cut into the neck and then ripped the head off. Because once the tendons were severed and sliced, it would be a lot easier to just rip the head off.
All right, we have a couple minutes left before we say goodnight. I I would love to take this time to do a little BTS about this show a little bit. Well, what gave you the idea for this show? Tell everybody a little bit about how the genesis of this show was created.
Well, you asked me, first of all. And I said yes. But also, it's like, I mean, killing characters is pretty much across all genres, with maybe the exception of romance. But even in
Mhm,
romance, you get deaths once in a while. I mean, the villains, especially with the historical romance, villains sometimes die, right?
mhm. Yeah, there's loved ones that die of cancer, and
Yeah.
that's part of the story and
So
things like that.
character deaths across pretty much all genres.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
it's it's a universal thing for a writer. So I
Hmm.
figured it would be an interesting topic to explore. It's also kind of a finite topic to explore too, because let's face it, there are only so many ways to kill off characters.
Yes.
There are only so many tropes.
That's
So I
why
mean
we're getting out of this before we get jump the shark and
yeah.
get too far ahead. Yeah.
But yeah, but I mean there are some interesting different tropes and topics, and I had some very interesting conversations, like the conversation I had in the first season with oh, Mercedes, I can't remember her last name because I keep mixing.
Blackie? No.
Yeah, thank you. I keep mixing her up with Mercedes Yardley, which I'm sure she'd be flattered by, but yeah, that conversation was very interesting, at least for me. I mean, because I
Mhm,
mean, I'm a historical buff, so the historical deaths versus modern deaths was very interesting conversation.
mhm,
And of course, Lee Murray, I love interviewing her always.
mhm. The previous one we just did, I thought was one of my favorites was Sean
Mm,
and talking about the mob death because I thought that was a very interesting look at, intellectually that might be one of those deaths that is kind of just interesting on so many fronts, on so
yeah,
many levels, in so many genres.
yeah.
So
And the interview with Bobby Nash was probably the one I had the most fun with, honestly.
nice.
Because you just have to sit back and let Bobby run. Because I mean, he'll give you good stuff no matter what you ask him, honestly.
I know you know a lot of these people already, but did you feel like you you felt did you feel comforted by how many people wanted to talk to you about killing characters a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, especially season two,
Mhm.
which you'll see in season two, it's mostly fantasy writers.
Mhm.
Because I put a post in one of my fantasy groups, and it's like they just like shark feeding frenzy. I had to turn people away from that post, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so that kind of surprised me a little bit.
And we should mention that nothing ever truly dies in the world of horror. We'll hit a lightning bolt every once in a while and jump back in and bring back words to kill. I think that's apropos of the horror genre in all respects. We were talking about doing some Halloween specials and things of that nature. So words to kill's not going all the way away, but
Yeah, and technically we did a show about resurrecting the dead. So
and Final Girl, we did a Final
yeah,
Girl show, so
mm,
we've covered quite a bit of it. And you even did jump scares where a
mm.
lot of that slasher that was a really great conversation
Oh
too with
yeah,
Mark
yeah,
Abbott.
I really enjoyed that one too.
Yeah, so that and there was a lot of slasher stuff in there. So if you're a fan of any genre, especially in season two, if you're a fan of a fantasy genre, you it's all covered there.
Yeah.
So you know.
Yeah, that's because all the fantasy authors just jumped on that one post. It's like, I got a whole season, people, and I didn't even have to do anything.
Well, Anita, I think we'll stop there. I'd like to thank you for being my guest. You were lovely. And thank you for 3 seasons of just amazing, amazing content. I couldn't have asked for better. And uh, you did an amazing job. You were a credible interviewer and incredible host. And thank you so much for the opportunity to broadcast all of that here at Going Now. We really do appreciate all of that. So tell everybody where they can find you and how they can get a hold of you and you know um, anything else you want to say?
Okay, well, you can find me at my website, afstewart.ca. It's all there. All my socials, all my merch, all my books. And I'm going to be the Indie Fantasy Addicts is having a virtual convention this
Nice.
weekend. And I'm not going to be on any of the panels. I didn't get on the panels, but I am going to be one of their featured authors in their author alley. So,
Oh, nice.
yeah.
Go get some books, everybody. That's awesome.
Anyway, and yeah, they're going to link to the website, and I've got my my box set for Saga of the Outer Islands up on my website. With the, you can only get that one direct because I'm trying to drive people to my direct store, but. Anyway, but it's yeah, you can get all 3 books and the bonus short story in that box set.
Awesome. Well, everybody go do that. And you know, I would normally end the show the way I end it, but this is not my show. So, Anita, would you like me to say it or would you like to say it?
I'll say it, and it's bye for now.